Women are nothing but machines for producing children. That's what Napoleon Bonaparte once said. Cold, dismissive, maybe even cruel at first glance. But dig deeper, and you'll find a brutal kind of clarity behind the words. See, Napoleon wasn't just a conqueror of nations, he was a man consumed by ambition, by destiny, by the relentless, bone-deep hunger to leave a legacy so large, time would have no choice but to remember his name. And in that pursuit, there wasn't much space left. Not for comfort, not for constant affection, not for love in the soft, domestic way the world tends to define it. This is what most people miss. Greatness. Real greatness isn't cuddly. It's not romantic. It doesn't pause to text back. It doesn't come home early for dinner or spend hours explaining its silence. It just burns. And people, especially in relationships, struggle with that fire. Napoleon understood this not just as a general, but as a man, a lover. His letters to Josephine weren't cold at all. They were desperate, passionate, even pathetic at times. The mighty Napoleon begging to be loved back. But while he was fighting wars and building an empire, Josephine was elsewhere with other men. That broke something in him, because he realized a truth many men eventually face. Not all women are drawn to greatness. In fact, many are afraid of it. Not because they hate it, but because greatness doesn't stay still. It doesn't reassure. It doesn't revolve around anyone. Greatness disrupts. It doesn't ask permission. And for a lot of people, especially those who crave emotional predictability, that kind of energy isn't love, it's danger. So they turn to something else, something safer. A man who doesn't carry storms in his chest, a man who isn't chasing the horizon every waking moment, a man who doesn't disappear into silence to solve problems too big to explain. A mediocre man. He's not a bad guy. In fact, he's easy to love. He's available, soft, eager to please. His world orbits around her, not around some towering vision or mission. He's emotionally present. He makes her feel like the center of the universe. But here's the truth. No one says out loud, he's not loved for who he is. He's loved for what he lacks. He doesn't challenge her. He doesn't make her question herself. He doesn't demand she grow with him or hold space while he sacrifices today for a future only he can see. He's manageable, and that's the point. Napoleon saw this, not out of bitterness, but through painful experience. He reduced women to their biological function, not because he hated them, but because he stopped expecting more. He stopped believing they could walk with him into the fire without flinching, because most didn't. He tried the love route. He tried to share the journey, and all he got was betrayal. So he made peace with walking alone. He embraced the cold, lonely mountain path of destiny. Because once a man chooses greatness, he must accept what it costs. You don't get to be extraordinary and emotionally cradled at the same time. Those two worlds rarely coexist. And look around, today has that changed? We pretend to worship greatness. We cheer for winners. We repost quotes about ambition and grit. But only when it's digestible. Only when it's pretty. Only when it doesn't interfere with our need to feel emotionally secure. The moment a man becomes truly focused, truly untamed, truly unreachable, people recoil. Especially in love. Napoleon lived this. He could command entire armies, reshape borders, and topple empires. But in his love letters, he was reduced to begging for Josephine's loyalty. And she walked away. Why? Because power doesn't wrap you in a blanket at night. It doesn't slow down for your insecurities. It doesn't sit beside you while you spiral. It moves forward, always. And for many women, that isn't love. That's abandonment. So they choose predictability over passion, security over fire. And they often don't even know they're doing it. It's not malice. It's instinct. Comfort wins. Stability wins. The average man wins not because he's more worthy, but because he's more controllable. And that's the bitter truth. The modern man thinks, if I just level up, if I become more successful, more driven, more powerful, then I'll finally be loved the way I deserve. But Napoleon would laugh at that, because he knew the game. He played it at the highest level. The more you rise, the less lovable you become. Not because you're arrogant, not because you're cold, but because your presence makes people confront their own smallness. Your silence becomes threatening. Your focus becomes emotional distance. Your ambition, intimidating. You become a mirror, and most people can't stand what they see. This is why so many women, often without even realizing it, choose men they can emotionally dominate. Men who won't walk away. Men who are simply happy to be chosen. They may look masculine, may talk a big game, but deep down, they're soft clay. They don't demand. They don't disappear into purpose. They stay, even when they're no longer respected. They orbit her. And here's the twist. She doesn't truly admire him. She may love him, marry him, raise children with him, but deep down, she knows she didn't choose a king. She chose a servant. Meanwhile, the man who won't kneel, the one obsessed with becoming something more than average, he pays a different price. He gets labeled emotionally unavailable, too intense, cold. But he's none of those things. He's just not willing to dim his fire to fit into a room that wasn't built to contain him. He's not chasing love. He's chasing truth, and that makes him a threat. So if you're a man on that path, understand this. You will be misunderstood. You will be left. Not because you're not enough, but because you're too much. You carry storms inside you. You burn at 2 a.m. with visions no one else can see. And that kind of fire? Most people don't want to stand near it. They want a fireplace, not a forest fire. But don't envy the man who's loved easily. Pity him. Because though he may be celebrated now, he'll never be remembered. He may be adored, but he'll never be followed. He didn't lead. He simply stayed. And you, if you stay the course, you won't just live. You'll leave a mark. Not in her heart, maybe, but in history. You see, a man chasing greatness isn't chasing applause. He's not driven by validation. He's driven by something older, deeper, something carved into the bones of men who refuse to live small lives. And that's why he's so misunderstood. Women want to be seen, to be heard, to be held. That's not a criticism, it's human. But a man with a mission, a man on fire, doesn't have time to constantly tend to those emotional needs. He's not unkind. He's just consumed. Consumed by vision, by goals, by purpose. And that kind of man, he doesn't stop moving. He doesn't text "good morning" every day just to feel close. He doesn't pause his dream because someone cried. He's not emotionally absent, he's emotionally disciplined. His heart beats for something higher than romance, something that doesn't fit in bedtime rituals or weekend plans. And that terrifies people, especially women who want presence more than purpose. That's the contradiction Napoleon faced. The man who reshaped Europe couldn't keep the loyalty of the woman he loved. Not because he lacked love, but because love wasn't enough to hold up against his mission. It wasn't enough to follow him through fire and solitude and obsession. That's the brutal trade-off: power or peace, legacy or love. But rarely both. Napoleon didn't seek loneliness. He was forced into it. Because the higher a man climbs, the fewer people understand the altitude he breathes. They look up at him and think he's cold, detached, unreachable. But they don't see the storm he's carrying alone. They don't see the cost. Great men are not immune to pain. They just learn to swallow it. They're not heartless, they're hardened. By discipline, by years of sacrifice, by betrayal after betrayal that taught them. Love is soft, but legacy is sharp. And to make it in this world as more than a man, as a name that echoes through time, you cannot afford to be soft. Not all the time. So here's a question. What do most women actually want? They say they want a strong man, a driven man, a visionary. But what they really mean is a man who's powerful, but still pauses for them, who's focused, but never too busy, who's confident, but still dependent on their affection. And that man doesn't exist. A man consumed by greatness doesn't orbit anyone. He ascends. And in doing so, he leaves people behind, sometimes the very ones who claim to love him most. But ask yourself, if a woman truly admired a man's ambition, why would she demand he scale it down? If she truly respected his vision, why would she call it emotional neglect when he disappears into it for hours or days? Because admiration fades when comfort is threatened. And most people, especially in modern relationships, want comfort above all else. They want a partner who makes them feel safe, heard, prioritized. That's not wrong. But it's not compatible with the fire of a man building something immortal. So instead, women often settle for the man who looks the part but plays it safe. He wears ambition like a costume, but he's not dangerous. He's soft in all the right places, emotionally available, easily distracted. He listens when she doubts. He slows down when she cries. He makes her the center of his world, and that's why she chooses him. Not because he inspires her, but because he needs her. And people love being needed more than they love being challenged. Here's the tragedy, though. She will never truly admire that man. She may love him, cherish him, even build a life with him. But deep down, a quiet part of her knows he didn't demand more of her. He didn't pull her into the unknown. He didn't force her to rise. And that's what real leaders do. Real men with purpose, true purpose, don't revolve around anyone. They don't ask for permission. They don't compromise their calling to fit someone else's emotional framework. They don't stop chasing fire just because someone's uncomfortable with the heat. That's not selfish. That's sacred. Because if a man has to give up who he is to be loved, that love was never real. It was a leash dressed as affection. And too many men are falling for it. They abandon their edge, their calling, their obsession. They trade fire for familiarity. And in doing so, they become shadows of themselves liked, maybe even loved, but never respected, never followed. And that kind of man? He dies with regret. But you, the man who chooses vision over validation, destiny over domestication, you walk a different path, a lonelier one. You're not rejected because you're broken. You're rejected because your very presence demands more than most are willing to give. You ask hard questions. You dream loud. You disappear into your mind for hours. You create in silence while others scroll. You're dangerous. Not because you hurt people, but because you cannot be owned. You don't bend. You don't pause. You don't soften just to be accepted. And that scares the hell out of people, especially women who crave emotional leverage, who want to feel like they matter more than your mission, who need you to stay, to fold, to compromise. Not because they're bad, but because they were never taught how to love a man who doesn't kneel. And that's the wound Napoleon carried. He wasn't too much. He was too free, too untamed, too focused. And for Josephine, and for many like her, that was unbearable. Because love, in its modern form, often comes with conditions. Be emotionally available. Be soft. Be present. Be normal. But a man on fire is none of those things. Not consistently. Not predictably. He burns too bright to stay in one place for long. And that burn is what makes him unforgettable. The truth is, if you're building something massive, something timeless, you will scare people. You will lose people. Especially the ones who say, just love me, just stay still. But that's not your path. Your path is war, discipline, isolation, building in the shadows until the world can no longer ignore your existence. And when that moment comes, the same people who left you, doubted you, misunderstood you, will claim they believed in you all along. But you'll know the truth. They wanted comfort. You were never comfort. You were conquest. So here's where it gets real. You, the man who won't bow, who won't slow down, who won't give up his calling just to be loved, you were never meant to be understood by the many. You were never built for emotional safety. You were built for risk, for sacrifice, for something so much bigger than anyone around you can grasp. And that's exactly why most people, yes, including most women, will never truly choose you. They may admire you from a distance. They may be fascinated by your drive, inspired by your confidence. But admiration fades when they realize you cannot be molded. You cannot be emotionally tamed. You cannot be distracted. You're a force. And forces aren't made for comfort, they're made for change. Now here's the twist no one wants to admit. Women say they want strong men, but they often choose weak ones. Not obviously weak. No, these men may look successful, say the right things, even appear driven. But inside, they're soft. They're pliable. They're safe. And that's the word that explains it all, safe. Safe is romanticized in modern love. He listens to me. He supports me. He makes me feel like I'm enough. But here's what they don't say out loud. He doesn't threaten me. He doesn't make me confront my limits. He doesn't challenge me to become someone more. And that's the great tragedy of modern relationships. Great men are not safe. They are dangerous not to others, but to mediocrity, to laziness, to emotional complacency. They demand something deeper, something real, something earned. But most people don't want real. They want comfortable illusions, predictable routines, emotions on demand, validation without cost. So they run from men like you. Not because you're broken, but because you're whole in a world that teaches people to stay fractured. You know who you are. You know what you're building. You know what you're willing to lose to get there. And that terrifies them. They can't control you, can't seduce you into slowing down, can't manipulate you with affection or ultimatums. You don't orbit anyone. You don't wait for permission. You don't shrink to fit inside the emotional box they offer. You ascend. And that ascent leaves people behind. Here's the final truth, the one that makes most men flinch. You must choose. You can't have both. You can build an empire, or you can build a nest. You can lead the world, or you can be available for nightly cuddles and emotionally charged conversations. You can chase destiny, or you can chase approval, but rarely both. And when you choose destiny, you have to make peace with loneliness, with being misunderstood, with the pain of watching the people you once loved choose safety over growth, comfort over fire, predictability over you. You'll ask yourself, was I too much? No, you were just too real, too sharp, too focused, too unwilling to break yourself into tiny digestible pieces just to be more palatable. You weren't rejected for your flaws. You were rejected for your fire, for the very thing that makes you you. Because being with you doesn't feel like rest, it feels like rising. It feels like staring into a mirror that exposes every insecurity. And most people aren't ready for that. Especially not the women who say, I want a strong man, but secretly mean, I want a man who's strong, but only in the ways I can control. They don't want a king, they want a servant who looks like one. And the mediocre man? He plays that role beautifully. He bends. He pauses. He adapts. He lives to make her feel secure. And that works, for a while. But deep down, she'll always feel something missing. Respect. She may love him. She may build a life with him, but she'll never follow him because nothing about him leads. He's praised. He's celebrated. He's a good man. But he's not a great one. Greatness demands sacrifice. It demands misunderstanding. It demands pain. The mediocre man avoids those things. You eat them for breakfast. You walk alone, not because you want solitude, but because the world around you isn't built to keep up with you. It wants you to slow down, to smile more, to be gentler, softer, more emotionally available. But you're not here to win affection. You're here to build something eternal. You are not comfort. You are conquest. Not conquest over others, conquest over yourself, over your fear, over your weakness, over the seductive pull of mediocrity that begs you to settle, to be more lovable, more approachable, more safe. Let go of all that. Let her go, if you must. Let go of the need to be understood, admired, chosen. Because you were not built for a woman's comfort. You were built for a man's purpose. And that purpose will cost you. Yes, it may leave you alone. It may harden you. It may stretch you so far that you feel like no one, not even those who once swore they loved you, truly see you anymore. But if you endure, if you keep climbing, if you stay loyal to the fire inside you, the world will remember your name. Maybe not today, maybe not next year. But history doesn't forget the men who refuse to kneel. Because here's one final truth, the one that stings the most. No woman builds statues. No woman writes history books. No woman leads nations into battle or vision into reality. Men do, and they do it alone. Bleeding. Focused. Unloved, but unstoppable. So the next time you ask yourself, why didn't she choose me? Remember, she didn't reject your flaws. She rejected your flame, because that flame made her feel small. And she didn't want to rise with you. She wanted to rest beside someone who wouldn't ask her to grow. Don't chase that. Chase the truth. And if this truth broke your illusions, if it peeled back the layers and exposed something raw inside you, then don't walk away quietly. Like, share, subscribe, support this channel. Because truth, like greatness, is never easy. It's not comfortable, it's not cheap, it's fire. And fire changes everything.